I hate that I have to make this video because this is a distraction from the content that I want to make and the content that I have promised my subscribers and my patrons. Also, most of you don't even know the people involved in this stupid drama and will probably find this video very boring. I do apologize for that, but unfortunately, someone from my past decided to reappear and start spreading falsehoods about me. And I don't want to let these lies circle around the internet without being addressed. The person I'm talking about is Demi, who used to be known here on YouTube as Antti-Ordinary. We were friends for about 8 months, and even though our friendship was rocky at times, it was a real, meaningful friendship. When I needed support, she was there for me. When she needed support, I was there for her. But she started to change after she became closer friends with a certain group of people. One individual in particular. And what mostly changed about Demi was that she started to cross lines that she wouldn't cross before. But to understand how things got to the point where they are now, I'm gonna have to give you quite a lot of context. When I made my video about Steve McRae back in February, I got a lot of support from people who, just like me, used to be friends or associates of Steve McRae and eventually realized that he was, in fact, an ass. The fact that I owned up to my mistakes and made a thorough apology to the people that I have harmed, that I felt that I have directly harmed, especially Fiona Robertson and Laura, was lauded. But I didn't make that video for the fucking applause. It was difficult for me to make that video. I dissociated myself from Steve McRae and his gang back in December. And it took me 2 months to finally be able to put what I was feeling in a video. And the main reason why I made that video was to make an apology to those 2 women who I have harmed and to give an explanation of the situation to my patrons and my subscribers, because many of them were asking me to talk about it. McRae's response to my video was, of course, the same pathetic response that he gives to every criticism to him. But he was right about one thing. A certain group of people who just can't get over him would try to co-opt me as one of them. There is an anti-Steve McRae group. It's a small group, but it exists. The fact that the people who belong to this little group want to admit it or not is irrelevant. The group exists, and to everyone who is an observer of this whole situation, that fact is very well established. Now, I would say that most people in this group I have no problems with. Some of them are very nice people, and I have a lot of respect for them. And I can honestly understand why they are so pissed off at Steve McRae, because some of these people has caused direct harm to their reputation. There is, however, a tiny minority within this group that are fucking bullies, and in my opinion are no better than Steve McRae and his minions. They might have had switched sides, as one of them told me, but they certainly have not switched behavior. Now, to me, this has nothing to do with picking a side. And please, spare me the pathetic, there is the Steve McRae side and the rest of the world side bullshit. You are part of the anti-Steve McRae team. Just man the fuck up and acknowledge that. Now, I was, for a brief period of time, part of the anti-McRae team on Twitter. I created a sock account to post memes about Steve McRae and sort of a call-out account to point out the stupid shit that he was saying, and especially to gain information about a video on the Warden fiasco that I was going to make, and I decided that I'm not going to make anymore. First reason, a lot of what I was planning to say on that video I have already said on the Silverman video. Second, because Steve McRae is finished. He's fucking done. I mean, he's so lost that I wouldn't be surprised that he ends up in jail with this whole fucking Katie Joy bullshit. Sooner or later, he's gonna say or do something extremely idiotic that's gonna get him in serious trouble.
I'm telling you right now, there's so many things wrong. And you know, in her real life, I've never met Katie Joy. And yes, I'm allowed to say her name.
Supposedly from...
Oh, Sting just said her name on my channel.
That call-out account on Twitter was anonymous, and it was my idea to deactivate that account and start a new one instead of revealing my identity with that anonymous account, because I was predicting that could lead to some problems. And the fact that I didn't create a new account was a big mistake, and I am dealing with the consequences of that mistake. And I say that because there are some people, as I said earlier, on the anti-Steve McRae camp that are just malicious, unhinged bullies. And eventually I knew that I was gonna clash with them. And that's exactly what happened. On the 22nd of June, I put out a tweet responding to something that Red Rhetoric had posted. And this deranged individual got angry at me because I used his screenshot. I mean, this boomer was making a big deal over the fact that I used his screenshot on a fucking tweet. I'm not fucking joking. How petty do you have to be to get upset at that sort of thing? And since I wasn't having any of it because I don't fucking back down to bullies, he started to pick on my weight, just like a fucking kindergarten schoolyard bully. But this guy is actually like 60 fucking years old. And why the hell did he pick on my weight? Well, because he knows that I have an eating disorder and I have struggled with my weight almost my entire life, and it does have a huge impact on my mental health. It's something that I'm very open and outspoken about. Now, if you think it's acceptable for this fucking idiot to start picking on my weight over something this petty, you are no better than the fucking bullies and misfits and hang around Steve fucking McRae who are picking on Katie Joy's looks. And here is the thing, guys. This individual does shit that is worse than some of the shit you call out from Steve McRae and his gang. Yet people turn a blind eye to it, pretend it's not an issue, or even encourage him to keep doing it. To the observers who have no dog in this fight, it make y'all look like a bunch of fucking tits. Tits, by the way, it's a key element in this story. On July 7, I was having a conversation with Rob Lee, who goes by Science First on YouTube, and the individual known as Sinister Porpoise. And we were talking about Cheshire's intelligence or lack thereof. And I mentioned there is nothing intelligent about manipulating men by showing your fucking tits. And Sinister Porpoise proceeded to make fun of the size of her breasts. Now, I posted a meme to try to deflect the situation, but Porpoise doubled down in making fun of Cheshire's petite tits. And I told Porpoise to stop, because that's fucking pathetic. And as a result, Porpoise blocked me. Now, I do find fucking hypocritical people who make fun of the fact that Cheshire and Steve McRae block people who criticize them. Just do the same thing when they hear criticism. I wasn't trolling Porpoise. I wasn't being rude. I was just making an honest criticism. After this episode, I put out a tweet saying that I don't condone body shaming and that I was going to criticize people who go after Cheshire's looks, because I think that is not acceptable. There is so much to criticize about Cheshire's actions and behaviors and personality. Why the fuck would you go after the size of her fucking breasts? And one of the criticisms that I made in my video to the women that surround Steve McRae is that they normalize sexual harassment and minimize sexual harassment in their little group. I will not condone an environment that minimizes and trivializes body shaming, especially of women. Because I know from my personal experience that the pressure on women in relation to how good they must look all the fucking time is much bigger than the pressure put on men. So yeah, I do have a double standard when it comes to body shaming and that sort of thing, because society is sexist. Society does have a double standard and put women in a much more difficult position. Now, some people agreed with this and some people don't, which is fine. You don't have to agree with me, but these are my values and I stand by them. But Agrippa's response was the emoji of a fucking hamburger. And remember, he's a 60-year-old man. He also accused me of virtue signaling, which is a load of fucking bollocks. It's not virtue signaling if I'm being consistent with my values. One of the first times I publicly stand up to Steve McRae was when he started to body shame Katie Joy. Now, I don't hold Steve McRae to a certain standard and the rest of the world to another. I hold Steve McRae to the same standard that I hold everybody else. So yeah, I did call him out on fucking body shaming. I will call other people out on body shaming when I see it. If I don't call them out, that's when I'm being fucking hypocritical. And yeah, I'm not perfect. In the past, I condoned that sort of behavior, especially with Laura and Fiona. And that's why apologizing to them was very important to me. Also, the reason why I got officially banned from Twitter was because I did make fun of somebody else's looks, which I did as a response because that person was making fun of my looks. It's not something I'm terribly proud of, but it was a reaction. It was not me just going out there and deciding to pick on someone's looks for no reason. Another reason that May got so upset is because I used the expression brick in a dress. Now, I don't usually go out insulting people like that. This person, though, insulted me. And yes, I did call Demi malnourished worm. And this bully tried to make it look like I'm being hypocritical because that's body shaming. Calling someone malnourished is not fucking body shaming. It is one of the tamest fucking insults I can think of. I mean, how sensitive you have to be offended by getting called malnourished? While calling someone a worm is an attack on their character, not on their physique. Another accusation that I got was that I started all this shit for drama. Right. On July 9, this account NT appeared out of nowhere and tagged me on a thread about the body shaming of Cheshire. It was pretty obvious that this person was engaging in sea lioning. They started making questions that seemed honest, but it was clear that they were just trying to wind me up. And when I stopped giving this account attention, they started doing to me exactly the same thing that Agrippa does. Trying to make me feel bad about my weight, putting food emojis in this fucking stupid montage. Now remember how Agrippa picked on me for using his fucking screenshots? Amazingly, he didn't pick on this account for completely stealing his MO and using his pathetic meme. So it was pretty obvious that this account was either Agrippa or someone who was working with him to harass me. I muted these accounts on Twitter because I was getting so many notifications from them that I was not able to keep up the actual meaningful conversations and other meaningful threads that I was in. And mostly, they were just posting food emojis. Remember, he's a fucking 60-year-old. So seeing how they were stalking me, yeah, I did start to pick on them a little and make a few tweets trying to wind them up and see what kind of reaction I would get. And this is the kind of shit that I got. Do you think this is acceptable? How low someone in your team has to go before you start calling them out for shitty behavior? Because honestly, some of you had called Steve McRae out and his minions for a lot less than this shit. But since I was mostly ignoring them, they had to, of course, amp it up. And they did so by trying to shame me over the fact that I was friends with Steve McRae. Now remember, back in February, when I made my video criticizing Steve McRae, I was lauded by Agrippa. Great video. Sadly, the saga of McRae will linger for a while. We all fell for his act at some stage. Mark those words. We all fell for his act on some stage. There are a lot of individuals who have made their own minds about Steve McRae's toxicity. What is refreshing is now good people are speaking out against him and are no longer in fear of retribution. So besides praising me and referring to me as good people, Agrippa acknowledged that at some stage he was duped by McRae as well. So he's a fucking hypocrite if he's going to use the fact that I was friends with Steve against me. Almost all of you in the anti-Steve McRae team at some point were friends or associates of Steve. But very few of you made a public apology for your mistakes like I did. Another problem that Agrippa has with me is that I called him a misogynist and a doxxer. Considering the fact that he thinks it's perfectly fine to body shame women, I think misogynist is pretty well established. And doxxer, well, I have already retracted that accusation. What Agrippa did to people who tried to threaten him with his dogs was more akin to blackmailing. And I'll repeat for you slow listeners. What Agrippa did was more akin to blackmailing rather than doxing. Is that clear now? And why do I say what he did is akin to blackmailing? Well, because he threatened to release compromising information to this person's employers. And this is a form of blackmailing. Now, the excuse that I get from his white knights is that there was an effect on Agrippa's real life. Now, when I asked for evidence of that shit, I was said that I was not gonna be given one because it's none of my fucking business. Which is true, it's none of my fucking business, but I have no reason to believe your fucking claim. So if you're gonna claim that there are real life threats to Agrippa's job and you present no evidence for these claims, I think you're fucking bullshitting me. I'm not going to take the word of a self-identified trolls for fucking granted. Now the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because I do not condone blackmailing. The way I see it, Agrippa was trying to use blackmailing as a revenge to the people who are trying to blackmail him. And one of the excuses that I get is that Nate Brody did the same thing. Well, if Nate Brody did the same thing, which is trying to harm people's jobs with personal or compromising information, Nate Brody is wrong. I don't condone that either. I don't know why some of you think that name dropping Nate Brody would make me instantly agree with you. Nate Brody is a good YouTuber, he makes good videos, I respect the guy, but he's far from fucking perfect. He was a complete dick to me once. And we're gonna go through that because it's important to this story. Now, one of the accusations that Agrippa made about me is that I was complicit with him getting doxxed by Steve McRae. Now, this is a big fat lie and a sad attempt of trying to smear my reputation. But some people, like Captain Sea Lion here, really bought into this bullshit and were saying that I helped doxing Agrippa. Now, for those of you who don't know, Agrippa was indeed doxed by Steve McRae on a Unirock live chat in December, sometime in December. I wasn't on that stream. I had nothing to do with that shit. And in fact, I only became aware of this fact months later on a video by Antti-Ordinary. Also, it seems that some people, Stuart Bunn and Puddle Fitz, tried to blackmail Agrippa on Twitter. I had nothing to do with that either, and I wasn't aware that such thing was happening. Now, the fact that I got along with Bunn and Puddle Fitz, and yeah, Puddle Fitz was someone who I was close friends with, he was also friendly with Demi, by the way, doesn't implicate me in this shit in any fucking way. Unless you're so fucking desperate that you're using guilty by association to try to make me look bad. Another reason why Agrippa is trying to implicate me in this shit is because of a conversation that I had with Fiona Robertson on Unirock's comment section. What I told Fiona is that Agrippa's personal information was shared in a private group on Twitter that I was part of. But that is not doxing. For the boomers who still haven't learned what doxing is, let's go through it again. Doxing is the internet-based practice of researching and publicly broadcasting private or identifying information about an individual or an organization. So information shared privately isn't doxing. Doxing is making personal identifiable information public, which is what Steve McRae did. I had nothing to do with that. I didn't help passing the information around, as Agrippa claims. He can't back that accusation with any fucking evidence, because there isn't one, because it didn't fucking happen. Also, the story that I was told by the person who shared Agrippa's information, and I think it was Nick Sutter, I'm not 100% sure about that, was that Agrippa doxed himself. Like he was trolling this individual on social media, if I remember correctly it was Facebook, and instead of using his trolling account Agrippa, he started to use his own personal account. Now maybe Agrippa did make that mistake, or maybe he didn't. I don't fucking know. Now the story that Agrippa tells is different. He says that someone, I believe Stuart Bunn, was looking at his information on LinkedIn and then tried to use that professional information against Agrippa via blackmailing. And maybe that's true, I don't fucking know. But regardless, I had nothing to do with any of it. My only fault was to be part of a private group on Twitter where that information was shared. And again, it was told to me that Agrippa had doxed himself. So trying to implicate me in any of this is total fucking bullshit. And just another sad attempt of trying to make me look bad with lies because you have nothing against me. The final argument about doxing that Agrippa and his white knights are trying to use against me is that I made some statement that I didn't give a fuck about Agrippa getting doxed. And I think they're basing that on my last conversation with Demi, or maybe I put out a tweet saying that, I don't really remember. Now, being brutally honest, the fact that this happened to Agrippa, someone whom I find morally repulsive, makes me care less about it. But that doesn't mean that I condone it. For example, if Steve McRae's home is ransacked tomorrow, I'm not gonna be upset about it, but the fact that I'm not bothered doesn't mean that I condone ransacking. It just means that I'm not gonna feel sorry if shit happens to a shitty person. The second lie that Agrippa is spreading about me is that I had something to do with the harassment of Bill Ludlow. After I made a tweet remembering him that this was not the first time that he started to pick on my looks, he said that I was pretending to care about Cheshire the same way that I pretended to care about Bill Ludlow. Now first, this issue about body shaming is not about Cheshire. This is about not being okay with normalizing that sort of behavior, especially against women. Because let's be honest, it's not just Cheshire. Then Agrippa and his buddies are body shaming now, is it? Now when McRae started body shame Fiona and Laura, that was a huge scandal in the anti-McRae world. And at that time, I condoned that sort of shit from Steve. And I felt truly embarrassed about it. And that's why I have publicly apologized to those two women. And now, I'm just holding the people in the anti-McRae team to the same standard. And I think the problem with men like Agrippa or Hand Sanitizer here, who is another old man who think it's funny to sit behind anonymity in his phone and join the body shaming, is that they are just not used to behold to those same standards. They just got too accustomed to being surrounded by hypocrites who hold Steve McRae and his gang to one standard and themselves to another. Now regarding Bill Ludlow, it's extremely fucking sad that Agrippa is trying to weaponize that against me based on nothing but guilty by association. Nate Brody tried to do that to me once, and it was disgusting. And a lot of people who saw it felt disgusted about Nate's behavior. And Nate has never made a public apology to me for doing that, like I have to the people whom I have wronged. He has only apologized to me indirectly. Now, I'm not a resentful person. I have forgiven Nate, but I have not forgotten this. Now, the only public comment that I made regarding Steve McRae and Bill Ludlow's quarrel was this tweet. And as this tweet shows, I did have a private conversation with Steve McRae about it, and I asked him to stop. And as you've seen, I also pleaded to Bill to drop it because this whole thing was making me truly sad. So to say that I sat there idly and did nothing or said nothing about it is a disgusting, malicious fucking lie. The third lie about me that Agrippa is trying to spread is that I had something to do with the slandering of Fiona Robertson. As you've seen on my video response to Silverman, the first time that this accusation against Fiona was made was on the Lastly Bass Super Chat Hangout on the November 30th on Steve McRae's channel. Now, I wasn't on that hangout, I wasn't on that chat, and I only became aware of that accusation in January on a video by Antti-Ordinary. At that time, in November and December last year, I was going through a lot of shit in my personal life. I have my own life, I have my own problems, and I explained already in my video in February that I wasn't paying attention to that shit. So if you're going to claim that I had anything to do with that, you have to demonstrate it. Otherwise, you're just going through guilty by association again. And fuck you with that shit. This shit was not really having much effect. Most people were ignoring it, so they have to go even fucking lower to try to get to me. And that's when Demi did to me pretty much the same thing that Cheshire did to Fiona. To use a situation that was not sexual in any way and fabricate an accusation of sexual harassment. And yes, Demi used the word accusation more than once, so she can't backtrack on that shit. Now, Demi came up with this accusation on a thread started by Miss Grumpy on July 12th. And when she was called out on her despicable behavior by Umansa, she doxed him. Full name and several pictures. And Umansa said that some of these pictures had only been sent to Demi because him and Demi had a brief romantic involvement. So it's pretty obvious that the person running this account, Antti, is Demi. When I made a post talking about this and pointing out how I had blocked this account for being malicious, this was Agrippa's response. How low are you willing to go to win some fucking pathetic feud with me, you deranged boomer? Because honestly, there is not much fucking lower you can go from here. Now, Agrippa and some of his buddies have been supporting Demi's defamation campaign against me. And it's interesting because he was outraged when Cheshire had her defamation campaign against Fiona, but when it's Demi doing it to me, then they are sharing it and applauding it. Also, Agrippa and his buddies demand outrage over the fact that he was doxxed by Steve McRae. Yet, when it comes to Demi doxing Umansa, we get only crickets. So listen to me, you pathetic old man. You are in no position to make an accusation about me being complicit on you getting doxxed. Get your moral double standard and stick it all the way up where the sun doesn't shine and where you have your head stuck in. And there is an important difference between you and I. I didn't know that Steve McRae had doxed you back in December. I only became aware of that months later. You are fully aware that Umansa had been doxed now. And Umi getting doxed is no fucking joking matter because he's actively involved in the Lily Jean and Lord Truman drama. Now, Lore has allowed Demi to follow her locked account on Twitter, which is something that Lore very rarely does. So, there is no doubt that Demi has given Lore Umance's dox. Yeah, that same unhinged woman who had doxed multiple innocent people and tried to get them fired. The last piece of moral hypocrisy that I want to address is a joke that I made about Agrippa that got him and his buddies really triggered. I put out this tweet saying that Agrippa is great, just like that Warden fella. So there was someone who actually came to me asking if I think Warden is a great guy. You internet skeptics never disappoint. Agrippa got so triggered by this tweet and he went cry on Discord trying to get some pity point from his boomer friends. Now my tweet doesn't imply that Agrippa is a fucking sex offender. It implies that he's a piece of shit. The same way that Warden is a piece of shit. It doesn't imply that they're pieces of shit on the same level. I mean, body shaming, bullying, lying, spreading defamatory accusations are pretty bad, but they aren't as bad as being a sex offender. And let's be honest, if I had something like Steve McRae is an asshole, just like Hitler, just to wind him up, you would probably love it. And let's remember, Agrippa not only has been spreading lies about me, but he approved that disgusting tweet that Demi made about me. But suddenly, I'm a big bad poopy head because I put two assholes in the same fucking sentence. Honestly, fuck off with your moral double standard. And this episode is a great example why I refer to this group of boomers as an anti-McRae cult. Now, of course, I'm using cult in a derogatory manner. It's not literally a cult. The same way that Steve McRae's community is not literally a fucking cult. It has some cult elements to it, but it's not really one. Come on. Now, people just call it a cult because it's funny to call it a cult. And because probably McRae gets really upset about it. Now, I think that this anti-Steve McRae clique has some cult-like elements to it too. For example, they have a us versus them mentality, which leads to this pathetic moral double standard. They also are extremely zealous in defending a member of their fucking clique, so that's why they got so morally outraged because I offended poor little Agrippa. They also put themselves in some fucking moral pedestal, like Captain Sea Lion here, saying that I'm not entitled to forgiveness. Who the fuck are you to tell me about forgiveness? I don't owe you any fucking apology. I have already apologized to the people whom I have wronged. So if I'm not entitled to forgiveness, bitch, you are not entitled to any fucking apology. So fuck off. Now finally, let's address Demi's accusation about me. Demi is claiming that I have flashed my boobs in a private conversation with her, which would be sexual harassment or whatever the fuck she's calling it. Now Demi, flashing is about your genitals. Boobs aren't genitals, you absolute dumbass. If you're going to lie about me anyway, at least come up with a lie that actually makes me look bad, you idiot. Now there were apparently 2 instances that Demi was lucky enough to get a glimpse of my uncaged birds in their full glory. They're really not that impressive. The first time, I was talking to Demi on DMs on Twitter about cross-sex hormone therapy. Demi was in the beginning of her treatment and she wanted to know the effects on boobs. And I was trying to describe it, how it had affected my boobs. So instead I just said, you know, fuck it, I'm just gonna send you a picture. And then I sent her a picture of my boobs. Now this was so unmemorable that when she made up her accusation, she didn't even remember that. Which honestly, kind of breaks my heart a little bit. Now she claims that I have flashed my boobs in our first ever private conversation on Skype. Now that is total fucking bullshit. Our first private conversation on Skype was in August. Bitch, I never had my tits out in the middle of fucking winter. Fuck off. I do remember that there was a conversation on Skype that I wasn't wearing a bra. I was just lying in my bed with my blanket covering, just like Demi was in this public video. This wasn't a sexually charged conversation because Demi and I never had this sort of relationship. I just also want to point out how fucking scummy it is of her to try to use my sexuality against me. That is low-key homophobic, bitch. Fuck you. Now this accusation is so fucking ludicrous and desperate that nobody is really giving it any attention. Well, except for a couple of her chases that are still around like Dynamic White here. Now it's even more pathetic that Demi would do this shit behind a sock account. She can't be that dim-witted to think that people would actually not realize that this antique account is her. I mean, on my first conversation with her on July 12, I was sure that that was Demi. The terrible grammar, the worst spelling, the lack of coherence in her arguments, and the fact that she was parroting her daddy like a trained monkey was pretty fucking obvious. This account that goes by a meme on Twitter was very quick to point out that the so-called interview between Demi and Antti was just Demi talking to herself. I mean, there are even the same fucking spelling mistakes. Demi, you are as good as Lore fabricating screenshots. Congratulations. No wonder the two of you are buddies again. Now, all of this was a big shock to me. But what was more shocking was to find out that this wasn't the first time that Demi did this kind of shit. Here is a private conversation on Discord between one of Demi's sock accounts, Trinisaurus Rex, and Diane Awesomeblazer back in April. Wanna help us troll Heretic being friendly with Steve? The plan is to figure stuff Heretic and Steve agree on and then push Teen Mom and Unirock fans to get Heretic to cover stuff they like and agree on forcing Heretic to ease up on Steve a little. Then we are going to leak a fake DM between Nick Sutter and Steve, acting like Steve wants to support and boost Heretic's channel to help take me and Agrippa down. Something like this, but better. This is just a mock-up. Then she pokes a picture of the fake DMs. We then leaked that to Unirock's Discord members that stand Heretic, knowing they will likely pass on to Unirock, who is desperate for any Steve content and will probably run with it. Then Heretic will read the screenshot through Unirock, whom he's friends with, and I think he will feel less sketchy if we can get Uni to bring it to his attention. All the time, we will meme Heretic and Steve for the stuff they both like and agree with, making us all the common enemy for them, but only Heretic will take the bait, I think. Until hopefully, over the course of the next month, we can get Heretic to be more friendly towards Steve. From that point, we can try and push him to white knight some of Steve's bullshit. He had a passive rage stream about us earlier. It was funny. Do you think that sounds workable, or do you have a better idea? Now, to my knowledge, this pathetic plan was never executed, and Diane didn't even dignify this shit with an answer. But this is the kind of shit that Agrippa and Demi are cooking up in the background. It's sad. It's fucking pathetic. Agrippa likes to say that this is just for fun. It's not real life. It doesn't matter. Bitch, this is the only life you had. And it's sad. Very fucking sad. And after this, you're fucking done. Whoever supports you and Demi now are no better than the people supporting Steve McRae and Cheshire. Calling your schemes, lies, defamation, and doxing trolling doesn't make it more excusable. This cop-out doesn't work for Cheshire, it's not gonna work for you, buddy. And the fact that you were doxed 8 months ago doesn't make you a fucking saint. Shitty things happen to shitty people. Let's remember Steve McRae and the Non Sequitur Show. Also, if all of this is still not enough to convince some of you idiots that these two Muppets are working together, let's look at some important information. Demi's Twitter account, NT, was created on the 28th of June, 6 days after Agrippa started to pick on me. And initially that account was barely being used and I had just posted a couple of unrelated tweets. Now, July 7 was the day that I made a tweet about Cheshire's body shaming. And that's when Agrippa started to actively target me. 2 days later, NT, Demi, started to pick on me and Rob Lee, Science First, who just happened to be the two people that Agrippa was having an issue with. I mean, how much more evidence do you need to get out of denial and acknowledge the fact that these two are working together? Now, this whole thing was emotional to me because Demi was my real friend and I was her real friend too. On January 13th, which was the anniversary of my brother's death, I was in holidays in Brazil with my family. Instead of being with my parents and my big brother, I was mostly with Demi on the phone because she was having a breakdown, thinking that she had been manipulated by Nick Sutter. And then there was also the day where she called me 4 o'clock in the morning, worried that she was going to go to jail because of a fight she had with her neighbor. She could have called anybody else in the fucking world. She called me. And I was there for her. And I calmed her down and supported her until the police arrived. That shit was real life. And she pissed all that away to play some fucking scheme games with a sad, lonely, pathetic man-child on the internet. I don't even know exactly why Demi ended our friendship. I think she wanted me to be outraged about Agrippa getting doxxed. I don't even know. She never really bothered to explain to me why she ended our friendship. Now, I had put all my private DMs with Demi on an unlisted video here on YouTube, but it got a privacy strike. And it was a legit strike. I didn't remember that Demi had sent me private information. After I got the strike, I located the privacy breach, I blurred it on YouTube, but YouTube deleted the video anyway. Now, I apologize to Demi for not blurring that information before I put the video up. I didn't remember that she had sent that to me. It was unintentional, and I'm sorry. I should have made sure that I blurred that shit out before I uploaded the video. I didn't. It's my mistake. I take full responsibility. Now I uploaded another version of the video, now with the information blurred, on BitChute. The link to that is on the description down below. Now if you want to see the kind of relationship that Demi and I had, which will prove how her accusations about me are absolutely ludicrous, you can check that out. I have nothing to hide. Now before I end this video, I want to thank everyone who had been supportive of me, especially on Twitter. Because yeah, there were a couple of days on Twitter where this shit was really intense. In particular, I want to thank Miss Grumpy. She's been great. The Umansa, who is a real victim in all of this and has been extremely helpful to me. Thank you. Diane Awesome Laser, who has been extremely supportive and also very helpful, giving me vital information. And finally, Faye the Most Gracious, who had been an absolute champ. Thank you so much. And Demi, I'm not playing your games. I will not dedicate one more second to you in my channel. I've been Sarah Michel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.